Okay. Oh. This is a continuation of the previous video for the hut sled supporters. And then it also applies to backpack barge people as well, and 4x7. Okay. The question was, do we have a union workforce? We do not have a union workforce. That does not mean we are anti-union. That simply means that our workforce is so small that they have not decided to unionize, or the product we make is not necessarily in the union's purview. If our company grows, I suspect it will become more of an issue than it is now, and it may go on the table. I don't know. I also don't know what kind of business model each of these companies will take moving forward. If they're employee owned, then I don't know there will be any need for a union. If they are owned by a corporation, I suspect there will probably eventually be a need and some interest in setting up a union. However, right now our company is small enough that this is not really on the table. All right. The reason I remembered this question, because this, and you know who you are, you asked it some time ago. You asked the question some time ago. You asked the question some time ago about the union thing, and I had never remembered to answer it. So I apologize for that. What made me remember it is I was in the post office, and somebody came over. They were looking at my package because, it was going to France. So I like to, put cartoons and stuff on it, make it look a little cooler rather than just putting the regular sticker on it. Just kind of like, I don't know, like if it's going to somebody I know, or I know somebody's cool because they sent me an email, or like if it's going to some cool country like that, I like to kind of make the package look a little nicer. So this guy was looking at it, and he's asking me some stuff about it, and I don't remember how it came up that we were talking about the union busting at Coors. I don't remember how that came up. We were talking about scab beer and stuff, and in Golden, back in the day, that was a trigger topic. But yet, it flowed somewhere out of the conversation, and I don't remember how. Maybe it was just me being an idiot and bringing it up because I find it important. I feel like people here have forgotten, in Colorado, they've forgotten how much of a union state this used to be. We had two of the probably most important union massacres in the history of unions happen in our state. One was at the Columbine mine, and one was at the Ludlow mine. And they were separated by a very long time, I think about 20 years. And the Ludlow mine massacre was, I think the people of the Columbine mine massacre considered that would be at a earlier, less enlightened time. And today we tend to think of our times as more enlightened and more considerate and more tolerant. And in many ways that's true. But I don't know that we've really been tested in our times to unions as being a threat, and we haven't really needed to, because our economy has been doing pretty well the last 40 some years. There's definitely been some low points, but we've been doing pretty well. Part of that is because a lot of countries that were formerly starving to death now have developing economies, and the tide rises all ships, I think was the term my friend used, or the rising tide carries all ships, or the rising tide lifts all ships. The rising tide lifts all ships. But when the tide is no longer rising, because that's just the natural nature of economy, and sometimes businesses suffer, and sometimes profits aren't made, and sometimes people don't spend as much as they spend, what happens? Well, typically, historically, the workers have had to bear a lot of the brunt, and that may be fair or it may not be fair, but when somebody who's making a lot of money gets hit with a bad economy, they have to give up their vacation. They may have to give up their vacation home. They may have to give up a boat. When somebody who's very poor gets hit with a bad economy, they may have to give up their home. They may have to give up their family. They may have to give up their freedom. So what tends to happen is poor people take the brunt of a bad economy in a way that wealthy people don't necessarily understand. And that's why when economies go bad and people suffer, there tends to be a need for unions, because there's always going to be companies that treat their employees well, that take very good care of them, owners that will sell their house to save their employees. That's the God's honest truth, okay? There are some millionaires and billionaires out there who will give the shirt off of their back if somebody needs it. And don't ever forget it, because it's the God's honest truth. Now, unfortunately, I would say those kind of people, while being amazing, awesome people, don't necessarily make it easier when there's a million poor people. They can help one, they can help 10, they can help 100, they can help 1,000, but when there's millions, there's only so much they can do. And at that point, we need to develop systems that help care for that many people. And that could be things like unions or laws, and sometimes when the laws can't react fast enough, then the unions can. So, I probably said something that hurt this guy, because in discussing it, he said, "Oh, what year was the strike?" And I said, "Oh, it was 72." He said, "Oh, I got here in 73." I guess to me that what that told me was, well, I feel bad, but his dad or his mom or both may have had to, and I may have gotten the years wrong. My memory gets kind of messed up sometimes. I kind of remember relative years, and sometimes I'm off by 5, 6, 7 years. Regardless what the time is, he got here after the strike. So the possibility, of course, is that his parents were strike breakers. His parents were people who went to work in the Coors Brewery, who had to replace the union workers that all strike and were then had to leave the company. And, I get it. I really do. I'm not going to let my kids starve to death in an effort to support a union that it doesn't even recognize me or know me. And I've worked in industries where, now this tape is not the best way to hold a cell phone onto the steering wheel. I've worked in industries where the union wouldn't accept me, the union wouldn't take me, and they didn't consider me skilled enough or earnest enough or smart enough or whatever other reasons that they had for not accepting me in their union, and I couldn't get into their union. So when some companies say, "Oh, we're busting up the union now, anybody who else wants to work, come on in," I get it, why there's going to be people who would rather support their family and not see them starve to death than support a union who didn't necessarily support them when they needed to be in a union. But given that, I still don't harbor a grudge to all unions, nor do I even really harbor a grudge to that union. I'm just at a different place in my life now. So would I get into a fist fight over a union? Because the reality was, maybe I shouldn't have mentioned anything about scab beer to this guy in the post office. Maybe I should have just held my tongue and not said anything, because that's a hot button issue and it's important to be polite. But the reality for me is that that's something that's important to me. There's Christians like that who will talk about their Christianity even when somebody doesn't want to hear it, because it's so important to them. I'm perhaps like that with science. Science is so important to me that I am willing to have somebody look at me as a pest or be annoyed by me just so I can share some of my love of the beauty of Mother Nature and of the physical world. So I'm willing to risk it, and I'm okay with that. It's just my love of science is more dear to me than being liked by people.